We can figure out more.
I was trying very hard to not, I'm trying very hard to be heard.
Hello?
Where are the teachers?
We're coming back.
Welcome back. I'm very pleased that both Allison and Sarah Elizabeth came from Chicago to share with all of you their story. You know, it probably would have been more politically correct for me to try to find two examples, not both from Chicago where I'm from, but you know what, we had two really good examples. So I don't want to by any means suggest that there aren't other schools around the country that have made a similar commitment, but I do think they're pretty few and far between, and we happen to think that both of these examples of remarkable school leaders who understood the importance of health created schools that integrated them, and they do it in slightly different ways, so it's not at all a one-size-fits-all kind of story. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to Allison Slade, the founder of Namaste Charter School in Chicago.
Hi, good morning. I'm short. Well, I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm just sort of going to share the story of our little school, Namaste, in Chicago. Please, while I'm giving this presentation, keep in mind that I flew here this morning from Chicago, and last time I gave this presentation to a similar group, I had a 3.5-week-old baby, and now I have a 3.5-month-old baby, and I think the sleep deprivation has gotten significantly worse. So if I'm not making a lot of sense, just like wave your hands or something, and I'll try to rein it in a little bit. So as I mentioned, my name is Allison Slade. I'm the founder and principal at Namaste Charter School. Namaste is a Sanskrit word. It means my inner light salutes your inner light, or the divine in me salutes the divine in you. Many of you may do yoga and use that as your greeting, and our name is pretty important to us in terms of sort of all of the qualities that we want to instill in our students and sort of have them give back to the school. Namaste opened in 2004, so this is our 8th year of operation. We started with only 88 students in grades K and 1, and now this is our first really, really exciting year with students in grades K to 8, and we are maxed out at 450 students. So we're graduating our first class in June. They're actually coming here on a bus. Unfortunately, potentially with me, to see the Capitol and learn a lot about Washington, D.C. So they're really excited about a variety of things. Just to give you a little bit grounding about our school, we're about 90% minority and 86% low income, free and reduced lunch eligible. Charter schools are public schools, and so in Chicago we're governed by the Illinois Charter School Law, which stipulates no tuition, no selection criteria, and admission by blind lottery. And throughout my presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about the demographics and the kind of students that we serve at Namaste, because they are definitely representative of students citywide in Chicago. And we were started really as a school that focused on integrating health, physical fitness, and nutrition as a way for students to reach higher potential academically. We are a school, so our number one priority is high academic achievement. But as a teacher, I really felt like there were lots of structural things missing in all of the schools that I taught in. I taught in 6 schools in 8 years, and that really stood in the way of kids achieving at high academic potential. And so when we created Namaste, not only pulled best practices that we had seen in lots of other places, but also sort of added this element on that really, I didn't feel was evident in a lot of places that I had taught in. So I can sort of skip this slide because Chuck does a great job of telling you why this is important. But again, childhood obesity is a huge problem. I just read an article this past weekend about the achievement gap that actually is narrowing between black and white students, but has more than doubled in the past 50 years between high and low income students. And so really it's not necessarily about the achievement gap in terms of race anymore, but we're really talking about low income students as being the students that really are disadvantaged in the educational system. Healthy students are better learners. You just heard a lot about that. And that a ton of students are entering school overweight or obese. And so that in and of itself affects their ability to focus and kind of gain the education and learning that is happening. But also, overweight kids are more sick and they miss school more often. So when you're not at school, you can't learn. And that's another one of our reasons. Sort of what makes us unique. A couple of years back, we do a lot of things at Namaste, and a couple of years back we sort of took a step back and decided to focus and say, what are the things that make our school so unique that if somebody left and carried something with them, like that something would have to stay at Namaste. And so we call those our core values. They're sort of broken up into 2 big chunks. The first 3 pillars that you see here are our Healthy Lifestyles program. It's nutrition, health and wellness, movement, and peaceful school culture. And then the last 3 make up our core teaching and learning beliefs, which are balanced learning, language and culture, and collaborative practice. For the purposes of today, I'm going to really focus on the first 3 that make up our Healthy Lifestyles program. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about our more academic-related programming. We do have a dual language program and a variety of other things that lots of people are really interested in as well. So the first thing is our nutrition, health, and wellness program. Those are our kids at our salad bar. We really focus on having our students not only have access to healthy food, but learn about that food. And so we do a variety of programs in our cafeteria, really using it as a teaching space. Every Wednesday we have what we call Eating Well Wednesdays, where kids are tasting new foods and then rating them, and if the kids really liked them, those things end up on the menu the next month. Unfortunately, last week's was this couscous and chickpea salad that I found very lovely. The students really did not like it, so it's not making it on the menu. But we did taste 2 weeks ago a lentil stew that was really good, and I was shocked that the kids really liked it, and it'll go on next month's menu. So really, kind of continually introducing kids to foods, talking about what food groups they're in, why they're important to eat, what nutrients they have, and this is all done during lunch. And so really making lunch a learning time and not a crazy time, and a time for kids to eat and understand what they're eating. We also have a snack program. Our kids get snack every day, 3 days a week. It's a fresh fruit or vegetable. Again, and we do a lot of learning around that fresh fruit or vegetable. Another big component of our nutrition, health, and wellness program is what we call our wellness blocks. I require my teachers to teach a 30-minute wellness block every day. It can be anything related to health, nutrition, mental wellness, physical fitness. And they have to write lesson plans for that just like they write them for math and reading with an objective, guided practice, and independent practice and an assessment. And so teachers are really integrating this teaching into what they're doing on a daily basis in the academic setting. Movement is our next pillar. There's two sort of separate components of this that I think are really important. One is increased time for actual activity. So you have to give kids time to move in school. We do that in a variety of ways. We have 60 minutes of PE every day. We start our day with a morning movement, which I may make you get up and do a little bit of because I sat on a plane this morning instead of taking part in our morning movement, but it's about a 10 to 15 minute yoga routine that is developmentally appropriate for the different ages that we serve. So we have one that is for K to 2. They do it together in the cafeteria. Our 3rd through 5th grade students do it together in the gymnasium. And then our 6th through 8th grade students do it individually. They create their own actually in their advisories. Because there's different things that we know from research that we can apply to each developmental age. So the lower grades, you'll see them doing a lot of awaking all the parts of their brain and aligning the two hemispheres of the brain, because kids in kindergarten tend to come to school like, you know, all excited and ready to go, and so some time to calm and align hemispheres of the brain and open your ears and eyes for learning is important. And for those of you who have 5th graders or 6th graders at home, they come to school like this. And they need to be woken up, and so we use a lot of music that I don't know. And they do a lot of cardio in their morning movement routine. So it's different, you know, like I said, based on the developmental age of the kids. And it really increases their readiness to learn for all grades. We do have daily recess for all students, K to 8, 20 to 25 minutes based on developmental age. All of our teachers are trained in how to integrate yoga and movement into the classroom. I talked a little bit about wellness blocks, which is a specific way, but then teachers also integrate movement into their teaching of core academics as well. We built a fitness center where kids are learning about creating an exercise program for themselves, including cardio, muscular strength, and flexibility, so that they know how to do that for their lifetimes. Really gaining the understanding that you do not have to have a soccer team to get physical activity, that you can really do these things on your own and create your own workouts and get healthy that way. And we have a lot of after-school fitness opportunities as well. And the last component of our Healthy Lifestyles program that I really think is overlooked in a lot of thinking about health and wellness is mental health. And we call this pillar our peaceful school culture. Obviously, mental health is really linked to academic performance in a variety of ways. Our kids, we're a diverse community, a low-income community. The kids come with a lot of different home environments and stimuli outside of school, and they need to know how to deal with all of the emotions that they have in order to focus and be ready for school. And so we developed what we call our Peaceful People Tools program in K to 2. Kids are learning about the thermometer in their body and when it gets hot and mad, how do you stay safe mad. They learn about brain buttons, which I do all the time, and lots of other things to deal with their anger. We don't teach kids not to get mad, because they're going to get mad and angry, but how do you use that, take a break, and get back to learning? We have a system of logical consequences. We use a lot of things from Responsive Classroom, and then we develop a lot of things on our own in terms of being a community where we don't just take away recess, right? If you cannot function in recess and cannot make good choices at recess, then you go to something called alternative recess, which is still physically active, still doing things to practice your social skills, but not in the large choice environment. You have to have choices made for you, and so you go to alternative recess. And we don't just take it away because you talked back to a teacher or you carved your name into a table or any of those kinds of things. We use logical consequences. So we create a consequence that relates to the behavior or the infraction that the student did. It kind of develops into the study of peacemakers and then into an advisory program in middle school. And we're really excited. We were just awarded, we're the first school in the city of Chicago in almost 10 years to be awarded an Illinois State School of Character Award. So we're really proud of that, and they're forwarding our application to the national, schools of character to be considered. So that's exciting. So everyone asks, like, great idea, right? How are you doing? You know, how are the kids doing in school? How is their health? All of those kinds of things. And we've been open for 8 years, which is definitely not a long time, but in the charter school world in Chicago, it is relatively a long time. And so we're really proud to report a lot of student learning results. Obviously, the first thing that we report on is how are our kids doing academically. On the 2011 ISAT, which is the state test in the state of Illinois, almost 87% of our students met or exceeded the standards. That includes all of our children. We have, last year taking the test, where 23% of our students had special needs. And those are a wide range of disabilities, from cognitive impairments and behavior disabilities to learning disabilities and speech language impairments. That is double what the average is in the Chicago Public Schools. And that includes about 40% of our students are English language learners as well. That compares in the city of Chicago to about 73% of students citywide. And the most exciting thing that we were really proud to report last year is not only did our students do really well, but they bested the Chicago Public Schools selective enrollment schools, which are schools that select their children based on the STAY-9 of their previous academic testing. So we're really trying to prove that focusing on these things with just your regular crop of kids can really help them to achieve better. When you disaggregate our results even further, 95% of our kids that are in the general education program, so those are students without IEPs, but potentially have language learning issues, met or exceeded the standards, and that compares to not quite 80% of students citywide in Chicago. Our attendance is really high in comparison as well. We attribute that, as I mentioned before, not only to hopefully kids really want to come to school, and so that's why they're there, but also they're healthier, and so they miss school less, which is really important in terms of being able to learn. And then we really focus on ongoing data analysis and growth. Every year we cut our data in about 100 ways to really figure out what else can we do. We are really aware of the fact that we need to continue to improve, and trying to find ways to continue to integrate new things into our program is really important to us. In addition to the student learning results academically, we look at how are our students doing. Are they healthier? Are they not healthier? You can see our kids up at the top working out in the fitness center, and Cynthia down here eating a kiwi during her snack time. We worked with Children's Memorial Hospital, who did a 5-year study on our kids. They weighed and measured our kids every year. Now we do that on our own as well. And what we're seeing is that kids' BMIs remain stable or decrease as a result of being part of Namaste's program. And the longer that they're part of Namaste's program, the larger the health effects are in terms of their body mass index. And I'm told that's really great, because when kids enter school, typically their body mass index increases because they're like you and sitting all the time. Like I said, we're continuing to disaggregate that data and figure out how does our fitness team use. We collect a ton of fitness data that I can talk about. We do pedometers, we do fitnessgram, we do everything under the sun to really figure out how do we make our kids more fit and therefore better learners. Obviously, 5-year-olds do not go to the grocery store on their own to buy food. So it's really crucial that we are engaging our families in learning about how to integrate these healthy lifestyles principles, whether it be nutrition, health, mental wellness, learning how to calm down effectively, etc., into their home lives. We're really proud to report lots of data from this school year, which we're in trimesters, so our first trimester ended in December. And 98% of our families came to our first trimester conferences. We use student-led conferences, so it's an hour block that families are coming to commit to. And literally there are only 7 families in the whole school that weren't able to come to those, so it's really exciting. In addition to that, 83% of our families attended at least one other workshop or family event. They're able to do that because in the 61 school days in our first trimester, we held 43 parent events. So that's like, and they're at all different times of day, and they're all different kinds of things. Some are series, right, like a 6-week Eating Right series, learning how to cook in your home. Some, we do a Commit to Be Fit class every Tuesday and Wednesday where we contract with the YMCA to use our fitness center and teach families how to exercise appropriately, and different things like that. So really exciting that we're really figuring out ways to engage our families effectively. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm really sad the DOE dude left because I was really going to get on him about our kids and that they should really come to our graduation and find someone really special like Arnie Duncan to come and recognize the great work that our 8th graders have done over the past 8 years. We hold our own high school fair every year. We've done it for the past 2 years where we're inviting a cross-section of traditional public, charter, and private schools so that we're really focusing on making the right match for students in high school. I mentioned 23% of our kids have special needs. Selective enrollment schools are not the answer for every student, but it is our goal that every single student graduates from high school and enrolls in college. And the only way to do that is not to help them get into high school, but to help them get into a high school where they are going to be successful. And that looks different for every student. We have a full-time guidance counselor that works on this year-round. Our 38 8th graders submitted a total of over 350 applications to high schools. That's more than 10, almost 10 per student. 85% of our 8th graders qualified to take the selective enrollment exam. And then we just started this new program that you can see at the bottom called Spark, where we give the 8th graders apprenticeships on Friday afternoons. So for 3 hours every Friday afternoon, our 8th graders get to experience their dream jobs. And they go through this interview process where we are identifying what that dream job could potentially be. And we have kids doing everything from working in sports media for the Blackhawks, or working for a magazine because they want to be a writer, working in a veterinarian office, to someone who randomly wanted to be a pastry chef. I don't know how she got that idea, but she interned at MK, which is a very famous, amazing restaurant that the Obamas go to with their pastry chef, and she made Mayor Rahm Emanuel's Thanksgiving pies and got to present them to him. So we hope that she used a lot of low-fat ingredients in that and talk to him about those things. Sort of what's next for us. As I mentioned, we're sort of always growing and trying to figure out what's next. We're really thinking about staff wellness. That's one element I didn't talk about, but that is a new initiative that we started last year, and thinking about, obviously, our teachers have to be models for the kids. And so really thinking about having, we have a yoga class every week for our staff can use our fitness center. What other ways can we integrate staff wellness so that they're models for the students? Continuing to build the case, the connection between healthy eating, more exercise, and academic growth. There's a lot of confounding variables and lots of things related to that, and so we're always trying to sort of figure out the direct correlation there and make the case to others. We're really focusing on our special needs students. As I mentioned, we have double the percent that is typical in the Chicago Public Schools, and so really making sure that we're meeting the needs of those students is really important. And we're strengthening our sharing best practices work and our dissemination work. In the first trimester alone, we had 99 visitor groups in 61 days. So it's more than one every day. We're looking at hosting these learning institutes, so where people can come, groups of teachers or school leaders can come, spend intense time at the school, and then have some collaborative time to figure out how they can adjust some of the things that we do at our school to work in their schools across the country. I've sort of brainstormed some of the ways that our teachers are prepared to do this work, and I know that's going to be the work of a lot of today, but thinking about induction and how do you bring teachers into the school, creating a mentor program, continuing to do PD for them, creating clear instructional expectations that not only align to great teaching, but align to the pillars of the school. So we sort of have those dual things going on in terms of our teacher evaluation system. We offer what we call booster sessions throughout the year to sort of continue to engage teachers in learning and thinking about best practices around that. And we have a really crazy system of inter-classroom observation where every month teachers get to see somebody else in the building teach. So we thank you. One of the questions I got asked, I just want to answer it before potentially somebody asks it, is sort of, wow, you guys do a lot of stuff, that must cost a lot of money. And we just finished the data from the end of last year. It costs about $10,000 to educate a student at Namaste in the Chicago Public Schools, which is our neighboring district. They spend $12,700 per pupil. And so we're educating our kids for 15% less, and they're doing really great. So we could always do more with more. We're always looking for more, but we feel like we're really taking what we are able to do and continue to improve it as well. So, thanks.
Thank you. Well, while Sarah was coming up, I'll let you ask a question.
Yeah, I'm just looking for some context. I think there's some really nice things that you were talking about. Two just contextual questions. How long is your school day, and are your teachers unionized?
Excuse me. Our school day is 8:30 to 4. Kids can come in the morning at 7:45 for breakfast, and we have an after-school program from 4 to 6. But the regular school day is 8:30 to 4. And no, we are non-unionized.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How large are your classrooms, and do you do home visits?
Yeah. The first question is between 20 and 28 students. Maximum is 28 students in kindergarten. We have 2 teachers in those classrooms. And yes, we do a lot of home visits, and we do them in a variety of ways, so I can talk more about that later too. We don't do them for everybody.
Our other Chicago,
Great. So my name is Sarah Elizabeth. I'm the founder and executive director of the Academy for Global Citizenship, which is another Chicago public charter school on the southwest side. And very briefly, I'll explain to you how the Academy for Global Citizenship landed in a now barrel factory here between the truck park shop and a pallet company on the southwest side of Chicago. Not your typical school location, perhaps, but I grew up in the Midwest and went to graduate school in England and became fascinated with how so many people around the world learned in different ways. And at that point, I began traveling and visiting schools in different parts of the world. That passion continued for the last 8 or 10 years, visited about 80 countries. And throughout that experience, my life completely changed as I saw firsthand what was happening in the world with regards to education, the environment, and health. And with that, I moved to Chicago, wanting to be in a more international city, and realized suddenly that these disparities existed in my own backyard. And I felt a tremendous sense of urgency to do something about that. So when I was 23 years old, I jumped on my bike and I rode down to the Board of Education and said, I have this idea. I went to Allison and said, I have this idea. I want to learn from what you've done. What if we created the Chicago Public School that focused on environmental sustainability and that empowered students to make healthy choices and was rooted in international mindedness? We can open a school in a dental tool factory on the southwest side of Chicago. And as you can imagine, the Board of Ed, I'm sure, for a couple of years thought this was just a crazy, absurd idea. But in 2007, they approved the Academy for Global Citizenship as a Chicago public charter school, and we opened in the fall of 2008 with our first kindergarten and first grade students. So as I mentioned, there's a few sort of differentiating components that I think really set our mission apart, and that is our emphasis on positive wellness and nutrition, international mindedness, and environmental sustainability. So very quickly, kind of some facts about where we are today. Similarly to Namaste as a charter school, in terms of how our enrollment and lottery works. We have 250 students currently through 4th grade, so we grow one grade level every year, so eventually in 2015, 2016, we'll have 8th grade students. 81% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch, and 90% minority students. So what makes our school just a little bit different? We do have an extended school day and school year. We implement the International Baccalaureate program starting in kindergarten. So there is the focus there on dual language, our daily integration of physical activity and wellness, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, and really engaging our families. So you might be wondering, what does that look like? So how does this look different, kind of a day in the life of one of our kindergartners? So I thought maybe I would walk you through kind of what that looks like, and allow some pictures to sort of show in the background, because I think sometimes those can speak so much more effectively than me trying to explain to you what it feels like inside this Barrel Factory. But today, kind of given the focus on wellness and health, I thought I would kind of talk about how that culture has been created at the Academy for Global Citizenship. And given our emphasis on environmental sustainability, there's a lot of integration there in terms of how we develop a positive school culture with wellness and nutrition. So where does that start for us? I often say it starts on a piece of asphalt. So here we are. This is our lovely 13,000 square feet of asphalt next to our Barrel Factory that we've transformed into a kind of a learning laboratory of sorts. Here we've got a solar power energy learning lab. We've got a demonstration wind turbine. You can see that we've got an outdoor classroom and some raised bed garden boxes, a greenhouse, and some chickens that live in our playground as well. And this, I think, is really where it all begins for us, as we, particularly the garden and how that plays such a significant role. I'm going to have to flip through these as they're not automatically advancing, but plays such a significant role in how we develop that relationship with food and how our students make positive choices with regards to food. So this garden, or this resource, really becomes a part of everything that we teach and learn. It's a part of math, it's a part of science, it's a part of literacy. We spend a lot of time learning outside. You'll see a lot of these pictures. We've got clipboards, we've got laptops, we've got all of our learning materials that we take outside to really utilize our environment as a learning tool. So what begins to happen when we focus on building these relationships? It's really interesting to see when students plan and plant and maintain and harvest not only our gardens, but the eggs of our chickens every day. What happens is they begin to look at their cafeteria tray a whole lot differently. So when they walk into the cafeteria and they see things like asparagus, and they see things like quinoa we were actually growing in our garden last year, they've seen these things before. They have a relationship with this food and where it comes from. They eat our scrambled eggs for breakfast, and after collecting them from our chickens that live in this coop. And so that, coupled with the emphasis on nutrition education for our students and families, really begins just to create a different food culture. So we have the highest participation rate of students participating in breakfast and in lunch in the Chicago Public School system at our school. And we equate that not simply because there's beautiful scratch-made organic food being prepared every day, but because of the relationship and because of the connection being made to where our food comes from. We are very intentional about developing relationships with our farmers. So this is when you walk into the cafeteria, you'll see a big map, you'll see a world map with a bunch of dots of all over the world where our teachers have traveled, but you'll also see a Midwest map. And here we've got the number of miles that our food has traveled. We've got the names of the farmers, many of whom our students know because they come and participate. They are a part of the education process. You'll see them in our garden working with our students. You'll actually see our students going on field trips to these farms, again, to really change the way we think about food and what that means for our bodies. So as I know I've got limited time here, but I think a third component that I'd like to mention is, as Allison so beautifully outlined, is really the importance of engaging our families. I think you said it best when you said 5-year-olds are not going to the store and buying their own food. And I think one thing that we've learned is, as much as all of these amazing things can be happening at school, it is absolutely essential that we engage our families in what this means at home. So some of the things that we're doing a little bit differently with engaging our families, we've got some really great programs and education events and cooking classes, and those types of things happening. But we also have a Garden Ambassadors program. So we're training our families and how to plant those tomatoes in their front yard, or in a bucket on their front porch, or next to their doorstep. We've started a walking school bus program so students can safely walk to school together in community that's led by parent chaperones. We recognize that in our community, sometimes accessing positive fresh foods was a challenge, and so we've developed, or we've kind of initiated a community-supported agriculture, a CSA drop that comes to the school every Monday. So we partner with our local bakery who does all of the whole grain breads for the school, and with our our produce distributor who's already coming down to the school with this produce, and we create these boxes so that when families come down and pick up their student from school, they can pick up a whole grain loaf of bread, and they can pick up a box of produce. And it's pretty interesting to see what's happened as a result of that. Sending these recipes home with students and having them work with their parents to create this food at home that they're eating at school. We've had parents create cooperatives, cooking cooperatives. They get their box on a Monday and say, what in the world is fennel, and how do I prepare this? And so groups of parents getting together and again, kind of building community through food and thinking about those impacts. So very quickly, the most important question I think for many people is what this equates to, certainly in terms of academic outcomes. So I'm just briefly going to tell you what that's looked like in our first few years, but then also sort of on a larger level where this is all going and what this means, not only for the Academy for Global Citizenship, but for districts across the United States. In our first school year, despite our optimism and excitement around practicing yoga and feeding organic food and doing all of these wonderful things, the Board of Education was right. We had some real challenges in terms of the students who entered our school, and 11% of them were meeting or exceeding the state literacy standards when we opened our doors. So a bit of a reality check in terms of needing to move very quickly in supporting all of our students. At the end of that first school year, we had 51% of our students meeting or exceeding literacy standards. At the end of the second school year, 80% of our students were meeting, or those same cohort of students were meeting or exceeding literacy standards. So some really extraordinary growth in just a short amount of time. 90% of our third grade students were meeting or exceeding math standards. So we attribute this to the comprehensive approach that's being taken in our school, centered around wellness. And as I mentioned before, 81% of our students are low income, 90% minority students. You all, I'm sure, know about the Healthier U.S. School Challenge. We were the first recipient in the Midwest to receive the Healthier U.S. Gold with Distinction Award. But something I often ask myself, now that we're in our fourth school year and we're beginning to get those questions asked to us, well, what's next? Are you going to open more of these schools? I think that's what oftentimes many schools in Chicago begin to do. They begin to replicate their schools so that they can serve perhaps 1,000 students or 2,000 students. But this is something that I think about almost every day. I think about the fact that we've got 405,000 children in our Chicago public school system, and about 80 million children in this country that are attending Chicago public schools. So I think a lot about what we can be doing to incubate these innovations and to scale the impact on a systemic level. Opening one more school or 3 more schools or 10 more schools is not the answer, because we have some we have a number, and we have some really incredible public schools that exist. And we're thinking very intentionally and strategically about how we can disseminate this information. So a few things that we're doing, we had about 4,000 visitors come to the school since we opened in 2008. And we thought, how can we really capture the essence of all of these innovations and provide them in a way that we can so much more easily share this information. So we created a sustainable schools handbook, which is available on our website, that covers a variety of topics pertaining to health and wellness that schools nationally have adopted as a resource. We're working on a food safety manual for school gardens because currently in Chicago and in many school districts, schools are not able, they're not allowed to integrate the food being grown in their gardens into their cafeterias. And so even though there's a school garden movement that's booming, there's still that disconnect that exists with not being able to bring that food into the cafeteria safely. We're working with our food service provider to identify the recipes that are working really well in our school and implementing those across the district. And so those 400,000 students can also be a part of that as well. We're working with a school, the Art Institute in Chicago, to design a kind of a prototype cafeteria that can also be utilized to inform districts locally and nationally about what they can be doing to support positive nutrition and wellness. So I know that I'm out of time, but one exciting thing that we're thinking about these days, we've outgrown the barrel factory. We moved from the dental tool factory to the barrel factory, have now outgrown the barrel factory and are thinking about the very fundamental need for space. Kind of along those lines of creating a prototype and thinking about teaching and learning in the 21st century and how schools really can become the center in a community for supporting positive health and wellness. We're working on a project to build a net positive energy school on a 10-acre urban farm, so a school that will produce more energy through clean, renewable sources than it uses, and growing a significant amount of food. So not only food for our students in our school, but for our families and for the community at large. So I'll end with this. This is one of my favorite quotes when I sort of think about where we've come and where we're all going in this movement together. It's exciting for me to be in this room among people who are so passionately dedicated to broadening the access of health and wellness in schools across our nation. But for those of you that can't read this, it says there's an old African proverb: if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But we have to go far quickly. So thank you again for taking this time to learn about the Academy for Global Citizenship, and please come visit us next time you're in Chicago.
Hi, everybody. So that I know was a little torturous because we cut the Q&A, so they're going to be very popular at lunch. Okay, so grab them at lunch. So they were great illustrations, but what we want to do is really get everybody's view on all these issues, so we're just trying to maximize the time for all of you to be able to talk. So this is what we're going to do. So this is your area of expertise, and it's been said many times here today that we really need folks to look at the all of it, and sometimes when you're out in the world, people either have a curriculum lens, or they're looking just at nutrition, or just at physical exercise. So we want you to sort of look at everything, and so what we're going to do is we're going to put you in small groups. So I'm going to cue you up for what that's going to look like. So first you have the briefing paper that I know you all read. And on page 3 of it, if you didn't read it, start cramming. You just need to look at page 3. So this is kind of just a bare bones entry point for part of the conversation in small groups. Because the first part of our conversation today is going to be what is the role of teachers and school health leaders. And for this conversation, that's really a label for principals and assistant principals. And we realize there are other school personnel who would have roles, but for purposes of this conversation, we're just going to focus there. And so this is just an entry point into a conversation about what role do or should teachers play as school health champions. as school health champions, and the same for teachers and principals, and assistant principals. And so you're going to be divided up into groups that are going to have color labels, so you won't know what group you're in until you get there. Riveting amount of excitement. So here's the deal. You'll have some of Healthy Schools Campaign staff there as resources, but we want you to sort of have self-facilitated conversations. And just so you know, you do not have to get to consensus, right? We're just trying to mine the expertise. So when we ask you to report out and think more like snapshot, you know, what came up in your group. Now, if there was a lot of consensus around something being really important, you know, you can point that out. And if there was a source of great debate, we'd be happy to hear what that is. But we don't need you to spin your wheels as much as to sort of think of it as mining everybody's opinion who's in the group. So I'm going to turn to my colleagues and say, is that right? Did I forget anything? Okay, so here's the secret. On the back of your name tag, you have a color, I hope. Raise your hand if you don't have a color. You're special. Alex is going to help you out with that. So you should be red, green, blue, or yellow. So here's the deal. Red and green are staying in this room. And red is going to be in the back where Dana is. Can you raise your hand so people know? So we're just going to gather chairs there. There'll probably be about six or seven people in a group. And then, what color did I just say we're? I'm having a senior moment. Red. Green's up here. And then in the other room is blue and yellow. And I had the forethought of actually putting on the wall what blue, where to go if you're blue or you're yellow. So we're going to spend about 25 minutes in small groups, and I'll check in on you and you'll tell me, okay, we're exhausted, we've exhaled all of our brilliance, or we just barely started and only 3 of us